is your daily news on CBC with your hosts, Alex Chow and Jason Park. Today's top stories are the Ford Model T, the most popular Canadian car, wheat prices rise as the economy continues to develop, and Alex and Jason with a special report on the international crisis, the Korean War.
Thanks for joining us, folks. Breaking news as more developments from the Korean War arises. But before we begin, here's Jason with a little bit of history for the events before the war.
Thanks, Alex. Korea was held by Japan during the Second World War, and after the Japanese defeat in 1945, Korea was divided into two separate states, the Communist North and the Democratic South. Last week on June 25th, 1950, North Korea marched approximately 100,000 men to invade the South. Now let's get back to Alex with the international responses to the war.
Thank you, Jason. So far, the United States has been quick to act on the situation, demanding that the United Nations come to the defense of South Korea. A UN force constructed through the combined efforts of 32 nations has been assembled to be led by the American nation to fight in Korea. Now I'm going to hand it off to Jason.
So far, the current players in the war are Canada, the United States, North and South Korea, and all the other UN countries, with all the action happening in Korea right now. Now let's go to our field reporter, Justin D, as he interviews William Johnson, a Canadian soldier.
This is CBC's Justin D interviewing William Johnston, a Canadian soldier who fought only for 3 days under the UN before being pulled out due to an injury. What thoughts came into your mind when you were called for the Korean War?
I thought back to World War I, where the US was essentially isolationist and didn't get involved in anything that had to do with them. Now, as a global leader contending for world domination, they push the UN to get us involved in things that don't have to do with us as a country. It feels a bit hypocritical on their part, and our contributions and losses don't benefit us directly.
Next question. Do you feel the pressure of communism taking over, as the US evidently does?
I feel that if communism is accepted by the people by natural means, it is not up to us to push our ideals onto them.
What was the Korean War like?
As we faced the onslaught of Soviet tanks and aircraft, many fellow Canadians, Korean, and UN soldiers died in the little time I was there. It was just as horrific as any other war, full of death and misery.
How do you feel about the Soviet and US rivalry and the arms race at the moment?
It's like witnessing two kids hoarding as much marbles as they can and boasting about who has the most. All it is doing is creating unnecessary tension despite having arguably the most gruesome war behind them. It should be a time of peace and cooperation.
Do you intend to continue fighting for Canada?
For Canada, yes. If we get involved in the US's selfish intentions, I don't know if I could. So long as our goals are just, I will fight with my all.
Thank you, William Johnson. This has been Justin D for CBC. Now moving on to Gregory Roberts.
This is Gregory Roberts, with an in-depth analysis on how the UN is dealing with this situation. The Korean War is the most severe test the United Nations had to face since its inception in 1945. As part of the whole Cold War scenario, the Korean War was a complicated issue in which the United Nations had to successfully deal with or lose credibility just 5 years after it came into being. The attack started in June 1950 when North Korea attacked South Korea. America wanted the invasion of North Korea and brought it before the Security Council. The UN security met the same day of the attack, and without Russia's veto power, because they were boycotting the problem of the government of China actually being the government of Taiwan, thus it being falsely represented in the UN. Without the veto power of Russia, North Korea was claimed to have broken peace, as well as the thought of action to be to invade Korea and drive them out by force. Both claimed by America to protect their democratic South Korea, and both were passed. Now, formulating plans, 16 member states would provide troops under United Nations Joint Command. It would fight with the South Korean army, and the US force would primarily be dominated by America. As troops landed in South Korea in September 1950, the war would ensue, and we'll see what happens next. Back to you at the center, boys.
And now a word from our sponsor.
Any place, any time is a good time for Coke.
Only Coca-Cola gives you that refreshing new feeling. Refreshing new feeling. Refreshing new feeling. Coca-Cola. best. Coke with delight, more than living. Refreshes best. Only Coca-Cola gives you that refreshing new feeling. Refreshing new feeling. Refreshing new feeling. Coca-Cola gives you that refreshing new feeling. Coca-Cola refreshes best. Only Coca-Cola gives you that refreshing new feeling. Coca-Cola refreshes best.
Thanks for tuning in, folks. This is Jason Park, Alex Chow, and we're signing off from CBC News.
One eternity later.
The Korean War has officially ended. Negotiations to end the Korean War have finally been made to have a ceasefire between the South and North of Korea. A part of the armistice is the establishment of the Korean Demilitarized Zone, also known as the DMZ. The Korean Demilitarized Zone is patrolled by the KPA, the ROKA, the US, and joint UN commands. This battle line, approximately along the 38th parallel, separates the Communist North and Democratic South. The armistice was signed between the United Nations Command, the United States, the North Korean People's Army, and the Chinese People's Volunteers. Even though an armistice has been signed, there was no sign of a peace treaty. Peace talks are assumed to continue to develop the situation in better light. Both the North and South Korea have been devastated by the war in both an economical and infrastructural sense. South Korea is expected to recover more quickly through the support of the United States. South Korea suffered 58,127 casualties, while North Korea had a loss of 215,000. The United States has lost 36,516 soldiers overall. An exchange of prisoners of war is expected to occur within the next couple months of ceasefire.